morning. This is Dr. Daria Brzezinski, WAAT 750 on your radio dial. We're here this morning with Joy Turner, and we're going to be talking about the Montessori education today. Joy is from California. She is the co-owner of the Montessori Greenhouse, which has 3 locations and 400 families. She's been in Montessori since around 1964. Good morning, Joy.
Good morning.
Now, Joy, give us a little bit of background about your schools in California and about your training in Montessori.
Okay. Well, I got interested in Montessori education as a parent. I had 2 little boys, ages 1 and 3, and investigated schools because of the 3-year-old, and ended up enrolling him, and the following summer taking Montessori training. I took that here in Los Angeles in a program that doesn't exist anymore. That was in 1964, and it is a 1-year program, as most Montessori training is. The program that I attended, we had a summer on-site phase of something like 8 to 10 weeks, and that was the majority of the academic part of the training. Then I student taught for 2 semesters with a supervising teacher in that person's classroom, and then that completed my work toward my Montessori credential.
Now, Joy, I know there's a difference between American Montessori and International Montessori, is that it?
Well, there's something like 10 Montessori organizations.
Oh, 10 now. I only knew 2.
Yeah.
Well, can you distinguish between them all? Because it's very confusing.
Well, it's interesting. I think that all the people who have been attracted to Montessori in terms of becoming professionals are individuals and individualists. And what sort of happened is that since Montessori's death, which occurred in 1956, there have been splinter groups that developed, and that actually was happening before she died. And people have sort of gone off, if they had a difference of opinion, and started a new Montessori society. So we, as I say, we now have at least 10. There may be even more out there that I don't know about. But the largest in this country is the American Montessori Society, which has about 12,000 members. It's a nonprofit organization that was founded in 1960, and it's still going strong today.
Now, is that the direct derivative from Maria Montessori?
No, it isn't.
Okay.
When Montessori died, she sort of left the leadership of the Association Montessori International, which was AMI, it's known as. She left the leadership of that group to her son, Mario. And then the American Montessori Society was founded with Mario's blessings. And for a while, the 2 groups were together in things like teacher training and so forth. But they did have a schism, and that schism seemed to be about just how much acculturation should occur. As you know, since you seem to know quite a bit about Montessori and are, in a way, a Montessorian yourself, you know that it is a worldwide educational movement. It's in something like 80 countries of the world still. So it was really, is an international sort of thing.
Well, I didn't tell you, but I am AMI certified from St. Nicholas in England. That's how I know so much about Montessori.
I see. Well, you are a Montessorian. Once one, always one.
Yes. You have a magazine or a journal. Is that a journal for only Montessori teachers, or is it for the general public? It's called Montessori Life. Is that it?
Right. It is an official publication of the American Montessori Society. It goes as a benefit of membership to about 12,000 people. About half of those are parents, and the others are professionals. So it's a challenge because it does have parents in its audience and teachers and heads of schools. And then we do have some subscribers, libraries, and so forth. So it's sort of a cross between a journal and a magazine, but it is a refereed publication, and it is in ERIC now.
Oh, wonderful.
We're pleased about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you give us a little bit of background on the Montessori? It began in Italy with Maria Montessori many years ago. Can you give us a historical perspective? Everybody's heard of Montessori, but I don't think they really know where it came from and how it developed.
Yeah, well, as you've said, it is named after a person, and this person was the first female physician in Italy. At that time, women were not allowed to attend Montessori school, and there's a rumor that they accepted Maria Montessori because of a special dispensation from the Pope. I don't know if that's ever been really proven, but that's the story anyway.
To go to medical school.
Right. Mm-hmm. And she did very well. She was an outstanding student, and her first job, I guess you would say, after medical school was working for the clinic of the University of Rome, the psychiatric clinic, and one of her duties was to visit asylums and select subjects for treatment at the clinic. At that time, there were no special schools for children with disabilities. They called them idiot children then, so we've really come a long way in terms of just the respect of the title that we give children with disabilities. And what Maria Montessori found when she went to visit asylums for adults was that children whose families were not able to care for them at home, either because they had a physical disability or a mental deficiency, these children were placed in asylums right alongside adults, and they received no special training in even how to take care of themselves, and she thought that was really a crime. So she investigated and did some research on her own. She discovered two French doctors who had preceded her, but who had been interested in special children and had developed methods for teaching them. And that was Jean-Marc Gaspard Itard and Edward Sagan.
Did Itard study the Wonder Boy from the
Wild Boy?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was the boy who was taken out of who was living in the wild.
Right. That was
and raised by wolves, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, in the early 1800s, and there was a great interest among the public, I guess you would say, at that time, in what were called feral children that would be found wandering in the woods, and a lot of them had no language at all, and a lot of surmises have been made about that boy, the wild boy, who became famous because Itard wrote about him, and Itard considered the boy the subject of an experiment and tried to teach him to talk. In his own view, although the boy did eventually say a few words, Itard considered that he really did not develop his language capability, and there have been a lot of surmises about why the boy was out there. Although the doctors felt that his speech mechanism was okay, despite the fact that he had a large scar across his throat, I think there's a good possibility that it wasn't okay, it was damaged. But he also was past the age at which children acquire language. So that would have made it extremely difficult and perhaps even impossible.
I never heard the part about the scar across his throat. I never heard that one before.
Yeah, there was.
Well, that would seem logical.
Well, Itard developed these special materials, and which basically were what today we would call sensory training materials, learning materials, and he used these to teach the boy. And as long as it didn't reach the point where speech was required, the boy could operate with distinguishing shapes and even letters and numerals. So Maria Montessori was very interested in this, and then Itard's methods were developed by Sagan, who was a student of his later. Itard is primarily known today for developing methods of education for the deaf, because the end of his life he spent teaching deaf children and developing ways to help them communicate. But Montessori's first work was with these children that she found in the asylum. She was quite well known because by virtue of having been the first female medical student, and she was fairly feminist in her sentiments, and that was a movement that was growing at the time. This was right around 1900, of course. And so she agitated, and she won some political support and some other funding, and was designated head of the first state school in Italy for children with mental disabilities. And that, according to her, was really her only teaching experience in which she was in the classroom every single day. And she sort of turned this facility into a teaching hospital. Many people today still refer to Montessori student teachers as interns, and I think that is where it came from, because she did use that model, the medical model.
Now, that's interesting. I never even quite associated that before.
Yeah.
So now Montessori schools, she's first developed her first schools in Italy for preschool children, first grade children?
No, they were young. The age of attendance at public schools at that time was about 7. So these were children under 7 and just past 7 that she had taken from the asylum. And after about a year, a little less than a year of working with them, excuse me, Montessori decided to present them at the examinations that were given at the end of first grade, I guess, in public school. And these children had been able to learn to read and write, and they acquitted themselves very well. And that Montessori, I think, was a favorite subject for the press anytime she did anything. At this time, newspapers were also really getting their start, and so the reporters really liked Montessori because she was young and fairly attractive and unusual. And so they made quite a stir and announced that this was a miracle, and Montessori herself said, while everyone was praising these idiot children who had learned to read, I was wondering what was keeping the children of the ordinary schools back so that they did not perform better than my poor children. But it did get her some worldwide publicity, I guess, and a few years after that, she had an opportunity to start a school for, quote, normal children, because she herself had wondered whether her methods would work well with normal children or work as well. These were children that 30 years ago we would have referred to as culturally deprived children. They came from poor families. In many cases, both parents were working at fairly low-skilled jobs, but nevertheless were at work all day and gone. And they left their younger children in the care of the oldest ones who were not yet in school, so that would have been probably late 6 or early 7-year-olds. And these families had recently been moved through a slum clearance project that was the the project of a group of bankers in Rome, and they had raised an area and then built new housing on it for these poor families to live in. But they were horrified because after a very short time they realized that these buildings were getting defaced and vandalized, and they couldn't figure out who was doing it. And upon closer examination and investigation, they discovered it was the children, the ones who were left at home all day to their own devices. So they approached Montessori and offered her space in a ground floor space in a building, one of their new buildings, if she would start some kind of child care program for these children that were left alone all day. Montessori's friends said she was crazy to take them up on it, but she really did want to know whether her methods would work with normal children. So she collected some funds for toys and so forth from some wealthy people that she knew, and the bankers group gave her funding, I think, for at least the noon meal, although they often had soup, I understand. Anyway, with a porter's daughter as a teacher and a very limited amount of furniture and supplies, she started this program, which we would call a daycare center today.
You are listening to WAAT 750 AM on your radio dial and WFBS 1280 AM on your radio dial. We're here. This is Children Come First. It's Dr. Darya Brzezinski. We're here every Tuesday from 10 to 11 a.m. And today we're here with Joy Turner of the American Montessori Association. And we're talking about the Montessori schools. And Joy, give us some information now. How does a Montessori school operate? Now, you have them now from preschool through 8th grade, correct?
Actually, it's infancy through high school.
Oh, infancy through high school, okay.
Yeah, there aren't many high schools in the country, but there are a few.
I didn't know that. Okay. And what does a typical Montessori classroom look like? Let's start with the preschool level.
Yeah, well, that was where Montessori started, with children from about 3 to 6. And one thing that was unusual was her use of concrete, tangible materials, using those to teach the children. Another aspect of it was that she designed many of these materials, and she designed them to be what she called auto-educational. They were, in her view, self-teaching, so that what the concept that she wanted the child to get was embodied in the material, and the child got that by using the educational toys. The teacher's role was different as well. Montessori viewed the teacher as a guide rather than a direct teacher, and the teacher's first duty was to prepare the environment, to get it ready, to organize it so it would work with small children. Probably the most important goal for Montessori of her approach was independence for the child, because she thought that was the natural state of things, that we all start out dependent and then we gradually grow toward independence. So she arranged this environment with child-sized furniture. I think a lot of people take for granted that there is such a thing, but there really wasn't before Montessori's time. And she is credited by at least one of her biographers with having invented that whole idea of child-sized furniture. So she arranged the room so that the children could learn practical tasks relating to the care of themselves and care of their environment, and pretty much otherwise tried to stay out of their way. The teachers do give lessons, and there are group activities, but even today, Montessori schools are still aimed at facilitating a child's independence.
And the way the classroom is set up. How does the Montessori classroom different? First of all, age-wise, how does the Montessori classroom different than a traditional classroom?
Well, it's what we used to call ungraded, in effect, and now we call it vertical grouping. In approximately 3-year age ranges, at least from the age of 3 on. We have 3 to 6-year-olds in the same environment, and then 6 to 9s, and 9 to 12s, and 12 to 15s, and so forth. With infants and toddlers, the situation's a little different because until the infants are mobile, they really don't participate in the same kind of environment that toddlers do. But that was Montessori's idea of making it more family-like in a way. And she felt that that children benefited from this multi-age opportunity to, for one thing, give lessons themselves. Children learn a lot from each other. And if you visit a 3 to 6 environment, you may well see an older child giving a younger child some help in how to use some of the equipment.
Now, federal laws, I do believe, or state laws, I'm not quite sure which, prohibit multiple ages in the classroom. How do you function with the laws, within the laws?
Well, because we saw to it that didn't happen here in California. It had never been the case until maybe 10 years ago this issue came up. And I think it's being considered again. I'm sorry, can you hold just a moment? Anyway, it didn't come to pass in California, and I think that's not the case in many states, only in some. But I think it is possibly a trend in the wind, and it's something that Montessori people should certainly watch for in their own states and take appropriate action to keep that open as a possibility, that ungraded age range. Of course, the educational reforms of the last 10 years have almost all included multi-age grouping as something that's desirable. So it's interesting that the laws are going the other direction in some cases.
Now, in the classroom, what kinds of activities in preschool classrooms across the nation in general, they are adamant about children learning how to read and write and do their numbers, write their numbers and things of that nature. What emphasis do Montessori classrooms have for preschool?
Well, it's very balanced. And there's something really important, which is that because the curriculum is, in effect, in a tangible form and is there on the shelves, accessible to the children all the time, it's their choice what they work with. Montessori felt that children would be attracted to what they were ready for at this stage of life anyway. So she ended up making the materials available, and if a child chooses something, if he needs some guidance in how to use it at the beginning, the teacher or an older child provides that. But the choices are the child's, and that is quite different, I think, from the way other preschools do things. It's the teacher who decides. And at base, it's the Montessori teacher who decides as well, because she's the one who decides what's going to be in the class in tangible form, available to children to choose. But the heart of the Montessori program is an hour and a half to 2 hour period in the morning and again in the afternoon, which we call work time, and that's when child choices are exercised. And the children choose, each one, what he or she wishes to do.
And that is the kinds of activities that are involved. Are they specific to skills or a direction?
Some of them are, yeah. In Montessori teacher education, we talk about basically 5 areas that can be considered curriculum areas. One, and a very important one, because it addresses motor development, we call the practical life area. And in practical life, you're going to find very simple but basic household tasks, things children see adults doing at home. It starts with something as simple as using a sponge. There are also things like pouring activities, sweeping, folding, and many varieties of all of those. Working up to more complex activities like peeling a carrot or making orange juice, simple cooking activities. Also in this area, we find a lot of self-care materials. Montessori developed a set of materials that she called dressing frames. And these are squarish wooden frames about no more than a foot across and up and down, foot square. And on them are fastened two pieces of material. And that material is used for demonstrating things like buttoning. The button frame will have buttons on one side and matching buttonholes on the other, and the child can practice buttoning and unbuttoning off of himself to begin with, which seems to simplify the task and isolate it. And there are all kinds of these frames: buttoning, snapping, pinning, zipping, and so forth, so that first the child learns to do the skill in isolation, and then later learns how to apply it to his own clothing.
You are listening to Children Come First, WAAT 750 AM on your radio dial, and WFBS 1280 AM on your radio dial. We are here every week, every Tuesday from 10 to 11 a.m., and we are here today with Ruth Turner from the American Montessori, Joy Turner from the American Montessori Association. And and what we'd like to do is to take a little break for a few minutes. If you'd like more information, you may call us at 1 toll-free 877-PRO-KIDS. That's 877-PROKIDS. Or you may email us at prokids@rlc.net. That's prokids@rlc.net. You can join us in our second half hour, and we'll be talking about the older Montessori school. Please come back and join us after our break.